Now, into the juice of it, of why we're here and why we believe this is a massive opportunity for NetNada and for everyone involved, is that with the new legislation, as everyone is aware, there are approximately 27,000 organizations being impacted. This is not everyone, not only the ones that fall under scope 1, 2, and 3, but potentially some of the high level supply chain or tier 1 supply chain of these organizations. I also want to point out that the growth curve that we're experiencing is a bit delayed, even though that legislation is in effect today. Those first reports are going to come out in 2026. So, your group 3 has even more um, of a head start. So we'll only see like the bulk of companies reporting occurring at like 2028 to 2030 mark, especially with the rollout of the different types of assurance. So just want to kind of still emphasize that we are early in this growth trajectory curve on how big the market is. Of course, you have group 1 organizations sorting those things out. You have group 2 companies doing dry runs, but just as like an understanding, this growth will increase in the next 3 years, but also making a note of that as more companies get captured, the price will come down of providing support, assistance, consulting, and software to these organizations as the space gets democratized or gets saturated with service offerings. So as you prepare your services, think about which part of your advice can be productized or can be targeted to compete not only on value, but also on price. This is a parallel of what's already happening in Europe with the prices of supporting organizations with reporting, with CSRD and so forth, coming down quickly in the past 3 years. I have a couple of recommended readings. One is this is published by the Australian government and is the impact of the new disclosures, and they have a high-level analysis on the price of disclosure by company and then by part of the disclosure. You can read this document, which is actually very succinct and very nice to read, to actually be able to benchmark pricing or to actually understand which bottlenecks in terms of like knowledge transfer and so forth might occur as companies roll out the reporting. The other thing that I recommend is early this year, we interviewed a bunch of sustainability professionals inside organizations and on the consulting side to capture pain points in their reporting. There's quotes in there which really like highlight some of the struggles that people are feeling in this space. The reason I recommend reading that because you can grab that messaging and repurpose it to benefit your consulting services. And finally, might be scary, but actually reading the standard, it is not that long, and having it bookmarked in your computer, Control F, put it inside an LLM, and just have it on quick access, so you can always answer any questions very fast and get familiarized with the reporting standards. I'll do the same thing as an example for the GG protocol if you support carbon accounting as an example. I'll send this all through that. But if you also have any other recommended readings or any source of information, just please let me know, because I would love to kind of add to this as well. Now, things that I want to touch on today, I want to craft a bit of market strategy because the market is big and sometimes we might want to do everything at once. This ICP, or ideal customer profile, a market segmentation positioning for how you can kind of double down on what you kind of offer. We might skip the product strategy because there's not enough time, and then a bit of the sales strategy and the pricing strategy for rolling out these services, and how can you price them, how can you get the first scope of work seen, and then roll out from there. I'll share, of course, the slides, but this is a good statement to kind of read over and over again and really craft or use this to craft what your ideal offering is. It is very tempting to say that you can offer everything within the reporting standard. and you can like outsource or hire other people to go and do a job with you. But crafting what you want to be good at uh, with this kind of sentences makes life very easy, because you might have your market nailed down, but you still haven't defined what your growth channel is to actually get those potential customers. You might have the market, but even within the market, you don't know what the ICP, this ideal customer, is yet, and you haven't crafted to a degree of analysis that you actually need to get the job done correctly and really build their trust. This is a recurring flow. After you get to the end, you'll go back to the beginning and reiterate over time. I recommend doing this quarterly, just because of like the dynamics of the market. Every time a new company publishes a report, every time there's a new conference and you learn something new, you can always revisit the market and the positioning in this. The two arrows here highlight where I believe, from speaking with a lot of consultants and partners and ourselves, where people struggle the most with. Um, Within all the people that you can service, defining and spending the time to really craft who the ideal customer profile is something people skip a lot. And by doing that, comms, communication, pain points, and emails fall short. And then in the value proposition as well, very tempting to say that your value is that you have more experience, or you have case studies, or that you can help with anything, or you're a generalist. But those things are not crafted enough, and some of the value proposition gets lost in the noise. And when the client receives, 3 40-page proposals, if that value proposition is not reiterated over and over again from your side, it gets a bit lost, and people don't really remember what you actually do well, and you might lose deals on that. Any questions on this while we go? All right. Let me just check the chat. Perfect. All right. I'm just admitting last people in. Let's see. Apologies for the late letting in people in the waiting room. I just saw those coming in. As I was saying, let me just go back to here. As I was saying, this is a reiterative process, and I recommend you to schedule by yourself or with your team a quarterly check-in on all the things within this chart. Now, let's talk about the market, right? And I've gave some example answers in here, but I want you to not take this as face value and spend the time to do this exercise by yourself or with your team. So what is happening at a higher level in why we're all here, right? That we know that there is now legislation that has been introduced. So organizations have to perform these disclosures. And we also know that, like, the other pain point is that normally associated with sales as part of a tender process or selling to a tier one customer, you might have to answer sustainability questions as part of the procurement process, similar how people have to do ISO in security, as an example, for software. This is happening more and more. So these are two things that are changing, but just with these two sentences, you're not able to really craft a unique message that breaks the noise in the market. So you have to go and deep dive into a couple more things. One example is this one, is that what is the problem you are going to solve, and try to be as specific as possible. Describing first the problem in your own words, what you believe the problem is that this market is facing, and then trying to record an unbiased discovery call with your customers or with your network, and really put this problem in their words, because sometimes there's a divergency or separation between what you think the problem is and how people reframe the problem. And if you can actually use the customer's words or your ideal client words, it will make for easier positioning and easier problem solution matching. Another example here is that, very colloquially put, people don't know what the disclosure is, and they are afraid of providing wrong information. Their job is on the line. They now have to report to the board or the CFO, and they're not really confident. So they actually want some hand holding and some clarification or simplification of what actually is needed. Um, and some already kind of know, but they don't really care about if it's right or wrong. They actually want to just tick that box, right? And they use the words like, hey, like, I got this on my plate and I'll have to tick the box of doing this reporting, right? And I actually love more circular economy, and I was a sustainability manager focused just on product and packaging. But now, because there's no one else, I'm also in charge of doing the whole sustainability or climate reporting, and they see this as a tick the box exercise. Use their words, not yours, to position this problem. And then here I left unanswered, but I'll give you some examples of how urgent it is, right? So even though the legislation occurs today, it is not a need yet because it's still 12 months into the future, your September 26th date of reporting. So understanding when do they actually have to do it allows you to reframe the context and pull the client closer to you or give them more breathing room. And secondly is how frequent. This how frequent really depends on what you actually help your clients with. A good example, if you're supporting them with only report writing, as an example, this will only happen once a year. If you're helping them with materiality assessments, you might only do it once every 2 years, because the client won't do materiality assessments every year with all the stakeholders. If you're helping them with carbon accounting, then you might actually do it twice a year, because they want to report also on like a halfway mark, so 6 months and then 12 months. So really understanding what your different services fit in and the different frequency allows you to do better positioning and also better pricing. Onto this ideal customer idea, right? It is easy to say that you want to help mandatory companies targeted by mandatory reporting. However, doing that kind of shoots yourself in the foot in terms of not really being specific on how you can provide the most help. These firmographics questions allow you to narrow down who you're going to support and how. Allows you to build noise within an industry or noise within a company type or size, so you have more referrals, more pertinent case studies, and more deep understanding of what actually happens within that. A good example is, you might say that you want to target construction industry as an example, but really targeting that industry well means connecting with every sustainability manager of everyone in a tier one construction company. Might mean attending the conferences, might mean starting a newsletter just to target that industry, might mean sponsoring some podcasts on that industry. There's a lot of things that happen to really nail down and become the go-to solution or service provider within the industry. So I really, really ask our partners to define their firmographics as specific as they can, even if it ends up just being 20 organizations after you've done this exercise. 20 organizations is still a lot of people for you to build a relationship with, to build trust, and to ultimately sell your services. So here, company size, you might start on your group 2 bracket, 250 employees. You might add that revenue size, but then industry might be construction that only do high level rise as an example, or only do commercial buildings. And then within commercial buildings who are being built in these areas of New South Wales. And then you become really, really targeted. Other things to trigger this ideal customer profile is things like policies, right? It's all of this plus if they have a sustainability policy already up on their website. Because if they do, it means that they actually care about this, or they're trying to move ahead of the curve, and you can leverage information in there to communicate with the customer. The other thing might be that the sustainability manager is new to the job, which means they moved in less than 2 months ago and they are keen to make change and impact and are looking for an extra pair of hands to support them on involving stakeholders within the company to invest in sustainability, as an example. So all these things can trigger signals for you to really be specific and relevant to the people that you're going after. Any questions on this? Now I'm going to check the chat for a second. Perfect. Anyone else in the waiting room? No? Awesome. All right. Perfect. Moving on. This is an example. The example here is of a group one company, and is a group one company that specifically already does NGERS reports, right? So it's a very large company. If you were to match this with the value prop, you might say that they actually don't need someone to do the carbon accounting, or they might actually need someone to help them with data management and data flows into systems, someone to build better processes for audit trails, or help them with the scrutiny they're getting from investors in banks as they ask questions about their decarbonization strategy. All right. So your pain points don't might not be everything, might be just a gap analysis from where they are across the legislation. So you might sit down with them, do 2 workshops, and speed out the gap analysis. After that, you might build a roadmap. You can also collaborate with the current consultant. They might have a consultant that does carbon accounting or is doing a risk analysis, and you might pair up with them, and you try to win just a piece of the puzzle. My thing is to not approach selling to group one companies or maybe group two companies as trying to do the whole piece and sending them a quote for $100,000. The goal is that you start building that trust by maybe getting a piece of the puzzle that is only $30,000, and from that you move on up the chain or the trust or win different parts of mandatory reporting. All right, doing everything at once might be like a good idea because the client is coming to you, I need everything. But once you break the problem apart, staging it might be even better, and it's less of a commitment from a board who might be not as interested to get this going or committing the budget to that. Same thing. Even when you find your organization, let's say you found the ideal one, you have some people that work in there that you know or worked in the past, maybe it's a previous colleague that went from consulting to working internally in a company, you really want to understand the difference between the decision maker and the end user. In this case, I labeled it as a product, but it could be who's going to be involved in a workshop that you are doing. The decision maker might be the CFO, but the user might be the risk manager and sustainability manager within the company. You will need to get approval from the decision maker that might not be involved in then the service that you are offering. A good example, when it comes to mandatory reporting, the board tends to be the decision maker, and your packs and your proposals go all the way to the board when they meet. But the people interacting with you will be your sustainability managers or analysts as you get the job done. This varies. You might be involving procurement and risk, but just as an idea. Thing that I recommend once you find the ideal company is understanding which are the personas. Things that can help you trigger in this exercise is exact job titles, the departments, the team that they work with. Are they by themselves? Do they have an analyst? Do they have interns? Do they have support? How much do they need from an external person? Qualifications. A very good example is, has the sustainability manager moved from marketing to sustainability? Do they have a masters of sustainability from UCID? Are they just kind of learning on the job? All of these will allow you to have a better conversation. And finally, these hobbies and interests. The reason why this is important is the better way to build these relationships might be outside the professional setting. And what I mean by that is, what podcasts are these people listening to? And if you listen to those, what else do you learn as a common ground to be able to have good conversations and keep on pushing this relationship forward? The last thing that I also use as an exercise is the top 3 jobs to be done by this person. And if whatever you're offering is not in the top 3 jobs, it's a long hill to climb. And if you can be as specific as you can by what you know about this person and the people of similar interests that you've chatted to, allows you to have way better conversations. So if this person has to do carbon accounting within the company, also has to tackle the new sustainability policy, and also needs to go and speak at conferences about the sustainability initiatives of this company, maybe the risk thing that you're selling might be on their radar because they need extra help, or it might not be. It might be just an extra burden that they're pushing back. So really understanding those things of the person you're trying to sell to is really, really important. Now, from that, I'm gonna now speak a second about NetNada, and then I'm gonna move on how we do the deals flow to inspire you to kind of get some ideas, get some thoughts, and also have you experience the amount of touch points that NetNada clients go through before they buy, and being realistic about how long these deals might take to lock in, and aware that not everyone has the same budget or the same growth curve as NetNada, but how you can kind of benchmark yourself or get assistance from NetNada to kind of tag along to some of the initiatives that we do. NetNada, we are basically an operating system for large complex organizations and sustainability consultants. So you can manage several clients within NetNada. You can build your reporting suite within NetNada. You can do your carbon accounting within NetNada, and then bring auditors to audit what you have done. The goal is that you focus on digitizing your IP and your skills, because we know that your consulting services and your human touch paired with technology is the winning formula. And we're not here to take over everything and do all the consulting. We actually want our partners to do all the client facing stuff, to be able to really create strong relationships and have NetNada as a technology partner for you to implement that more efficiently, win more deals, and hopefully a better margin at the end of the day. What we offer is a couple things. Carbon measurement, mostly it's the automated aspect. Reduction strategy involves consulting and understanding the business. Sustainability reports you can export from the system, but we recommend our partners to take the information and build their own reports, because they can craft them with the insights and industry expertise that they already have. And then the mandatory requirements. We have templates, we have ASSP management, we have gap analysis, all within NetNada. So as you build different services, you can tap onto these tools to kind of level up on how you do them. I strongly believe that, for example, in carbon accounting, numbers are just a problem. Numbers become a solution once a consultant grabs them and distills that information and puts it into a context that is easy to digest for the organization. So I think that's a really good, strong pairing, and we're feeling having a lot of success in that relationship building. Same thing with the requirements of mandatory reporting. There's a lot of things to do. We have templates on offer to kind of speed up the work, but crafting those documents, meeting the stakeholders, running the workshops, it's really a place for a consultant. And even though we can do it and we have the resources, we want to pass along that information for you to be able to implement and deliver. The benefits we don't have to go through, but there's an element here which is beyond compliance, is the grants, tenders, and requests. The more you focus on if this client has commercial needs for sustainability information, the easier it is to get buy-in. If it's just from a compliance perspective, you're fighting kind of a budget and a convincing situation. If you manage to get close to sales and that they can use this information for better marketing positioning, for marketing information, and to showcase the the work that has been done, the easier it is to kind of convince the prospect. So try to navigate, and in those meetings understand what's the need behind the services that you're doing. Certifications that we offer. Now, certifications are a step down or up depending on your client's needs. They might be doing mandatory reporting, but as part of their strategy, they want carbon neutrality, or they are in the built environment and they want neighbors rating. They want maybe climate active as they go to kind of certification that they maintain, or they might do an SBTI and a CDP. You can do all of that with information that NetNada provides for you. And as a consultant, you can do the submission and manage all the admin consultation and charge the hourly fees to kind of deliver that service. Example. So, like I said, we work across different industries. From a software perspective, our goal is that the consultant really becomes proficient in a go-to industry, and they adapt their knowledge, help us build a platform to tackle their needs. The needs from a convention center in the event space is different from a council, and is different from a group one company in the financial services. We want you to merge the baseline of NetNada with your expertise to make that offering unique and win that work against the big four, as an example. What do we offer to kind of empower our partners? First, these sessions, and everyone has my calendar link, chatting, supporting, doing deals together, helping with pricing, leveraging our case studies of 100 plus clients to help you win more deals. But we offer this partner hub that kind of distills and has all this information like lead qualification, customer journey, pricing guidelines, competitive comparisons in one central place. The goal is that you reply faster to queries from customers and that you upskill over time to really be the default go-to person for that client or that prospect as you move them down the sales funnel. We know that there's a lot of information out there, so our goal is to try to consolidate that with tools, information, quizzes, surveys that you can use as you go. A very good example that I keep on saying again and again and again, we have a fantastic, simple tool which is a readiness assessment, and this gives a score from 1 to 5 in terms of how ready they are to report in relation to climate reporting. Having that and giving that value for free as you engage the customer and being able to use that information to better craft the messaging as you meet with these clients is very valuable, right? So using things that we have available for every one of our partners will help you win more deals as you deliver more value upfront, even before you lock in a contract. So that's kind of where we want to go with our partners, is that you can deliver as much as you can upfront to win their trust before you lock in the contract. Might be giving access to NetNada, the tools, documentation, the studies, whatever it might be. This is an example of a journey with a partner on a successful deal, right? It's very, I'm just showing here like different stages, and there's different meetings within this. The expected close time is 60 to 90 days, depending on the size of the deal. Okay, so it doesn't happen overnight. Of course, if you're having a referral or it's an inbound, it can be faster. But from building the first contact, meeting with the ICP, and then meeting all the people involved, all the stakeholders, it can take up to 2 to 3 months. If it's a group one company, even more. Now, the deal size on the software side is normally $15,000 for like a group two company. This does not include your service on top of that. So you might have a 50-50% split. You might actually sell 2 workshops and all the support for implementation of the software. So the price on the consultant size varies, but we are there along the journey to help you pitch in position as much as you can. Same thing on like the touch points. We say that normally from first meeting to ideal client, we close in 7. So it might be 7 meetings, or like might be 3 meetings and 5 emails, whatever it might be, but it takes a while. And these are very people who know us. If you're starting cold, it can take way more than that. You can, of course, use your CRM to maintain and build the same stages. But normally what we have is a prospect, discovery, demo 1, demo 2, contract, proposal, sign off. It's different for different companies, but building a cadence, you then allow yourself to time how many days a lead is within this customer journey. Again, we can jump on meetings on day 1, or you can jump together on meetings in day 60 with your ideal clients to try to win them over if needed. The discovery stage really is about qualifying this prospect independently. This is about finding that they have interest, and if they have interest, do they have budget that meets what you can offer, right? And how maybe you can use NetNada to lower the time, therefore reducing the budget. If they are the decision makers, because the person that approaches you might not be the decision maker of the deal, and the urgency. I have countless stories of people saying and approaching me on day one, hey, I need this by next week. We're about to sign a deal. We need this carbon accounting done. Or need someone to help us with risk. And then it takes 4 months, right? Everyone has those stories. I'm just saying defining the urgency and why things might be delayed. It's super valuable. So you have less emotional attachment to that journey, right? On top of that, I recommend that every touch point that you do with a prospect is filled with value. So here we have an example of 6 resources that every time you communicate to follow up a deal, you are delivering a question and a free resource. So qualification checklist could be, an internal customer journey, a guide for mental reporting, pricing guidelines, info pack, the readiness assessment, all of these things, an invite to a webinar, all these things allow you to be already a partner before you even close the deal. Let's see. This is kind of to summarize a couple things, but knowing this as much as you know the legislation, or as much as you know the financial impact analysis of the government is super, super valuable, because you want to be able to answer those questions without hesitation when you are on those meetings. You want to showcase that value. And some questions that they ask is, am I actually group 3 or group 2 or group 1? And there's a lot of hesitation in those questions. One thing that you can use to make yourself even more of value in these conversations are the criteria is at the end of the reporting period is the consolidated revenue or assets or employees at that point in time. So if you go to a merger or you separate companies at the end, like the last quarter of the reporting period, that's the trigger to ensure that you are within a group 1, 2, or 3. Okay. The other thing is also the date to report. Even if you finish your reporting period in 1st of July, the report goes in September that needs to be submitted. So knowing those two things already allows you to showcase that you might have more insights about the true reporting thresholds and the true dates of submissions of the report as you communicate with the clients. If anyone has any questions on those dates or those thresholds and the triggers for that, feel free to send me a message or an email afterwards. On to the demo stage. So you've identified the discovery, you maybe had 2 meetings, and then you want to do a demo. So this demo might be 2 things. The demo might be a demo of NetNada. The demo might be you showcasing your go-to risk analysis framework in a spreadsheet and you sharing a screen. What we do know is that while you showcase NetNada as a partner or your own internal tool as a partner, normally you won't have all the decision makers in that demo, and you might need to schedule a second one with every stakeholder involved. We also know that people want access between these demos to try out the tools, and most tools out there are not given to the clients before you actually enroll or start the journey. So if you have a simplified version of your Excel spreadsheet that does something, or you can give away the free account of NetNada, will allow you to build that trust between meetings or between those 60 days or 90 days of a customer in the pipeline. Okay, so an example might be, hey, here's a demo of the NetNada account. There are partners. I've also have a drive with all this mock data for you. All right, why don't you download that and try it in the platform before we meet again? You might send a video of the platform that you have or instructions on how to use your spreadsheet, whatever it might be, or your PDF, just to build that trust even before you jump on that second demo. Another thing is like front foot things like security, FAQs, any issues like that before they even ask the questions, because your stakeholder that met with you wants to kind of consolidate all of that and share with the board as an example. Same thing, don't be cagey with pricing, because the earlier you can showcase pricing, once you have an understanding of what's needed, the easier it is to kind of build that relationship. When you do close a deal as a partner, right, we allow the invoicing to be just between you and the prospect, even if you're using NetNada. So you invoice your prospect or your new client, and then NetNada invoices you for that license. Of course, it really depends on the type of deal and how you, if you have a license for the whole organization where all the consultants and all your peers can use it. It might be a multi-year license or might be contract by contract. But most often, the prospect, even though they know that they're using NetNada, the invoicing is done to the partner, not the prospect. So we know that these organizations want to have one invoice for everything. They don't want to be paying multiple vendors. So life is easier if done this way. Of course, might depend, might have different requirements, but this is the general way that our partners work together with us. Any questions on the invoicing or things like that? Awesome. All right, we're on the home stretch. It's a lot of talking on my end, but I think it kind of consolidates a lot of the learnings that we had in the past 3 years of working, and I hope you can use those to kind of really position yourself. This journey as well, once you've onboarded, right, the client, is your customer journey as after you win them. Now, what you sell really depends. This is an example of delivering a carbon account, very simplified. But what you'd have is the onboarding phase where you explain how everything works. You have the data request phase where you showcase which data is going to be needed, and we have a task manager inside NetNada. And then finally, you have the delivery of the carbon account, which might be in person, in a report, in a PDF, and so forth. If you're doing risk as an example, you might have your onboarding, you might be setting a date for your workshop, might be sharing the risk management framework, conducting the workshop, building a report, and deliver that. Really depends, but having that section or sequence mapped out even before you onboard the client is really, really useful. For smaller companies, if you were to do a 12-month engagement, it would look something like this. This is just 4 carbon accounts. So even though you just want it in your main delivery is that carbon account, the goal is that you provide value for 12 months, right? So you might deliver the carbon account in month 2, but then you might have a checkup in month 5, and then in month 9 you've already implemented some of the changes and you're doing a review on that or starting the data gathering process. How you shape these deliverables depends on the size of the client, the budget, and what you want to offer. But our vision is that you should position yourself as a yearly person to support that. Even if you're just trying to do one deliverable, you need to build that trust over time so you can renew that contract again. For larger companies already, like in that group 3 or 2, you have things like your gap analysis, your climate scenarios, risk management, and you also start involving more stakeholders. And the more stakeholders you can involve, the more relationship you can build, and the stickier that service is. I always recommend that you start with the gap analysis and the roadmap if you can, if the company is uneducated, because with that you'll build up relationships, and then from that you can sell or position your other services. If you just jump into maybe climate scenario analysis without doing the gap analysis, you might find that there's no one in the team with the right context to be able to join your workshops, or you actually need more governance before you can conduct the scenario analysis, or you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting externally to get the job done. Same thing as well. The company might already do things like scope 1 and 2, and you're just helping with scope 3 as an example. You don't have to sell the whole thing. In terms of sales strategy, and now this is just very quickly, I'd love to zoom in on this. This is kind of how you could provide a pricing list to a client, and if they're early stage or advanced reporting, but you might shape it in phases. So you put a price on each phase, and then the client has an experience of like a shopping cart. right? Where can they, even though you can do everything, they just want one or two or three things. And of course, you try to put it in like a logical sequence that if they are an educator, they'll start with something like a gap analysis before jumping in doing physical risks. Maybe they want to bypass the carbon inventory and they just want to do the physical risk straight away, and that's fine. But by putting this in a shopping cart experience, it gives the client the option. Of course, try to be transparent with the pricing and, of course, the description of what it involves. You might send a pricing list first and then you expand on a proposal, but having a very quick way for the client to understand what you can do in a one pager that can be shared with the team and internally, it's super, super beneficial. So if you haven't worked on that, please do. And here, if you're putting all this together and if they were to engage you end to end for mandatory climate reporting, you'd put your total project cost at the end. Some companies have $60,000 available to do this. Some are getting proposals for $400,000. It really depends on the scale and how significant it is. We just know that proposals at that $300,000 mark are slowly coming down. They were initially set and benchmarked by the Big Four, but companies want more knowledge transfer, and so expect an engagement that is below 100K to do most of the things, especially if you're using tooling to get those things done. It is hard to justify now super expensive billable hours on report sections as people get more familiarized with AI to speed up things, to report writing. There's less billable hours in there. Still, the workshops, super valuable, in-person things, and stakeholder management is where the consultant excels, as well as additional research. Finally, if you were to do some messaging, I'm giving the example here of just carbon accounting, but we do more than that. But you have things like, okay, what is the difference between NetNada and something else, or your services through NetNada and something else? You could be GG protocol online. Of course, everything is, but you need to really ensure that you are stating that the process is auditable, and you can export all the data from the system, and the data is yours. And that the goal is that you're building a method and a process that can be audited by an external party. So not just running the calculations in a black box, but actually having an audit log and a traceability of everything that you do, right? The thing that you might add is the upskilling, education, and training, where, yes, we have a system, but as a consultant, you're actually going to upskill the people involved in doing this because that is a core component of the governance on climate reporting. And so education, training is something that you also have to do. So that could be an example. Objections that you might face when doing this. If you're using a software, it might be data security, and it's the one that like always talked about. NetNada has this ISO certification, but the example that you might have is the biggest risk for your data is not a software. The biggest risk is an unlocked spreadsheet shared with an intern that is trying to get the job done, right? So at the moment, carbon accounting and mental reporting are all done offline in spreadsheets that get shared around in drives or as an attachment. This is your way to kind of build more accesses and processes into that. One thing is not having the internal resource, right? We can't do that. We can't collect the data. I can get the stakeholders involved. At that point in time, you need to showcase that if you don't do this is a 15-month journey, and if you wait, it will be more expensive into the future. And so bringing the financial side into that is really, really important. Also, in the don't have internal resources, showcase that climate reporting is about showing evidence of things getting done. And if you do everything last minute, it will be hard to justify how you are actually implementing the governance, the risk, the measures and targets, and so forth. So you want to build those things internally for a long period of time as early as you can to make it more robust, easier to report, and more affordable into the future. If they mention they want to do it all internally and they don't want to outsource, that is fine. It's a value. It's a perfect justification. I'll mention two things. First, still give the value for free. Give the resources, give the tools, give the PDFs. So become a partner because they will need your help into the future. And you can mention things like if they're doing carbon accounting, are they applying inflation, currency exchanges? How are they tracking that? How are they building the systems? And all of that. So there's a bit of that to navigate. These are very common objections, and I'll let you craft your own responses to that. But this is an example. So this is like the end of the webinar. We've covered your positioning. We've covered a bit of the market itself and how you identify the ICP, how you identify the messaging and your services in your industry. We've covered a bit of how do you actually go to market, the touch points, how many touch points do you need, how to set up a demo, how to do pricing in a pricing shopping experience. And also, of course, we went to some of the objections or the key messaging that you need to do. Now, this messaging really depends on what you're offering. I'm giving an example of messaging for NetNada, but it depends on your consulting. The last thing is, like, as next steps, what we always recommend our partners is, if you can, get in touch with us and sending a signal to the market via a webinar, via one customized and unique downloadable that has your branding. It's a very good way to signal the market that you're ready to kind of onboard new customers for climate reporting. I can help you craft that. We can use our designers to help you create those things, and also our expertise in running campaigns to reach the companies that you want to reach, and do that in a collaborative approach. That is all for today. I'll send all the recommended readings and all that stuff. I'll just love to know if you have any questions before we go. It's a lot of things to cover, but I just really want to know if there's any particular thing that you have a question or that you want to take out that you don't know yet that you'd like to know. Dirk, pleasure seeing you again. Yeah, feel free. I'll reach out via email as well, because I think you're doing some amazing work in logistics. So happy to chat there, Dirk. Not a problem. I'll send
awesome. Thanks, Alfonso. We'll be in touch.
No worries. Kelly, nice seeing you on the call. Any questions from you? Philip, any questions on your end?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, I'll let you go back to lunch, but really appreciate, and I'll follow up with everyone. But if you have any questions offline, please feel free to let me know. And it's also always a pleasure to talk with everyone here.
Yeah, thank you, Alfonso. That's really good.
Thank you, Luis. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jadi.
Thank you.